5 years after the first humans had been abandoned on Kethvar, Ambassador Quintel returned to what he expected to find as a dead world, suitable for Confederation development. Instead, his ship's sensors detected something that challenged everything he thought he knew about biological systems and planetary evolution. The world below was not the hostile Deathworld recorded in Confederation files. It was a garden paradise with atmospheric conditions that supported dozens of different species, all living in apparent harmony. The population readings showed over 25,000 humans, plus representatives from 6 other species that were supposed to have been eliminated years ago. "This is impossible," Quintel muttered as he reviewed the data. "Kethvar is classified as maximum biological hazard. Nothing should be able to survive there, let alone thrive." His aide, a younger Velthari named Kessin, looked at the readings with growing alarm. "Sir, we are detecting massive energy signatures across the planet, and there are structures in orbit that do not match any known technology." "Broadcast standard diplomatic contact protocols," Quintel ordered. "We need to understand what happened here." The response came not through their communication systems, but through a method they had never encountered before. The message appeared directly in their minds, transmitted through some form of biological neural interface that bypassed their ship's technology entirely. "Welcome back to Kethvar," the voice said in perfect Velthari. "This is Governor So Young Park of the Kethvar Cooperative. We have been expecting you." Quintel felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. "How are you speaking directly to us?" "We learned to adapt to our environment," came the reply. "All of it." The landing was unlike anything in Quintel's centuries of diplomatic experience. The shuttle touched down not on a primitive landing pad, but on a living platform that adjusted itself to accommodate their ship's weight and configuration. The air outside was not the toxic atmosphere recorded in their files, but a pleasant mixture that felt comfortable even without environmental suits. Governor So Young Park approached their landing party with a smile that seemed genuinely welcoming. Behind her walked representatives of 3 different species that Confederation records listed as extinct, along with humans who looked remarkably healthy for people who had supposedly spent 5 years on a death world. Ambassador Quintel. "So Young," said in flawless Velthari. "Thank you for returning to check on our progress. We have much to show you." Dr. Hyun-Woo Kim, now serving as the planet's chief science coordinator, gestured toward a landscape that defied everything the aliens thought. They knew about planetary ecosystems. Where their records showed barren wasteland, there were flourishing cities that seemed to grow out of the landscape itself. Where they expected to find the remains of failed colonies, they found thriving communities of multiple species working together. "I believe you are confused about what kind of world this is," Hyunwoo said politely. "Your classification system listed Kethvar as a Class 0 death world, but as you can see, it is actually a Class 9 paradise world. We think there may have been some error in your original assessment." Quintel's aide whispered urgently, "Sir, our instruments confirm it. The atmospheric composition, temperature ranges, and biological diversity all indicate a Class 9 world. But that is impossible. This planet has not changed. Our species has been monitoring it for thousands of years." "Perhaps," suggested engineer Dong-Min Lee, who had joined the welcome party, "the problem was not with the planet, but with the perspective of those trying to classify it." The tour that followed challenged every assumption the Confederation had made about human capabilities and planetary development. The visitors were shown cities that had been grown rather than built, with living architecture that adapted to weather patterns and seasonal changes. They saw agricultural systems where dozens of different species worked together to produce food that nourished everyone. Most remarkably, they witnessed a level of cooperation between different species that the Confederation had never achieved. In thousands of years of trying to manage galactic civilization, the key insight, explained Dr. Ji-Hai Choi as she led them through an agricultural complex where earth plants grew alongside alien flora, was realizing that adaptation works both ways. "We did not try to change Kethvar to suit us. Instead, we learned to change ourselves to work with Kethvar. The result is better for everyone." Taeho Shin, who had somehow transformed from a mining engineer into a philosopher of interspecies cooperation, walked with Quintel through the central plaza where humans, plant creatures, tunnel dwellers, and visiting representatives from other Worlds shared the same space without conflict. Your confederation operates on the principle of hierarchy, Tejo observed. One species dominates, others submit or are eliminated. But we discovered something different here. When every species contributes its unique strengths, the result is stronger than any single species could achieve alone. The technological demonstrations were equally impressive. Dongmin showed them manufacturing systems that combined mechanical engineering with biological processes, producing materials that were stronger and more adaptable than anything in Confederation databases. Kyungmin demonstrated atmospheric control systems that could modify local weather conditions to suit the needs of different species simultaneously. But the most impressive demonstration was the planetary coordination system. With a simple gesture, Kyungmin activated a planet-wide network that allowed every living thing on Kethvar to communicate and coordinate instantly. Your species has always been afraid of biological systems, she explained as waves of bioluminescent signals pulsed across the landscape. You prefer mechanical technology because it seems more controllable, but biological systems are not less reliable. They are more adaptable. Dr. Haiwan Choi presented the most challenging information of all. The Kethvar Cooperative was not an isolated success story. Similar transformations had occurred on dozens of other worlds where the Confederation had dumped undesirable species. We are in communication with 37 other cooperative worlds, she explained, showing them star charts that marked successful colonies throughout Confederation space. Each world has developed its own unique approach to multi-species cooperation, but all of them have achieved something your Confederation has never managed: true peace between different forms of life. The implications were staggering. The Confederation's policy of exile and elimination had not removed threats to their civilization. Instead, it had created a network of highly advanced cooperative worlds that represented everything the Confederation claimed to want but had never achieved. "What do you want from us?" Quintel asked, finally abandoning diplomatic protocols for direct honesty. So Young's answer was simple and devastating. "We want to help you." "Help us with what?" "Your Confederation is failing," she said gently. "Your population growth has stagnated. Your technology has not advanced significantly in centuries. Your member species are becoming increasingly isolated and hostile toward each other. You are facing exactly the problems that we learned to solve here." Dr. Young Mi-han, now serving as the cooperative specialist in interspecies medicine, presented medical data that showed the health and longevity improvements that resulted from the multi-species biological integration they had developed on Kethvar. "The techniques we developed here could extend the lifespan and improve the quality of life for every species in your Confederation," she explained. "But more importantly, they could help your species learn to work together instead of competing for dominance." Seonghwan Lim demonstrated the biological enhancements that allowed humans to thrive in conditions that would kill most Confederation species. "These modifications are not just about survival," he explained. "They are about expanding the possibilities for where and how different species can live. Imagine if every world in the galaxy could be inhabited by multiple species working together." The offer the humans made was unprecedented in galactic history. They were willing to share all their technology, all their biological innovations, and all their social discoveries with the Confederation freely, with only one condition. "The practice of exile execution must end," So Young stated firmly. "No more species sent to deathworlds as punishment. No more elimination of populations that show dangerous adaptability. Instead, we propose a new approach: cooperative development of challenging worlds by volunteer populations from multiple species." Woojin Park showed them preliminary plans for transforming dozens of currently uninhabitable worlds into cooperative paradises using techniques developed on Kethvar and the other exile worlds. "Every world that your Confederation has classified as too dangerous for habitation could become a thriving multi-species colony," he explained. "The galaxy has thousands of worlds with incredible potential that are being wasted because you are afraid of the challenges they present." The tour concluded with a visit to the orbital station where Minho Jiang coordinated the cooperative's space exploration program. The humans were not just offering to share their planetary development techniques, they were prepared to help the Confederation explore and develop previously inaccessible regions of the galaxy. The universe is vast, Minho observed as they looked out at the stars through the station's observation deck. There is room for every. 3 years after the humans had been abandoned on Kethvar, their colony had grown beyond anything the alien watchers could have imagined. The population now exceeded 15,000 people spread across 4 continents, and they were no longer content to remain on a single world. Min Ho Jung floated in the observation pod of the orbital station that humans had built in secret, hidden within the rings of debris that surrounded Kethvar's largest moon. As director of off-world exploration, he was responsible for humanity's expansion beyond the planet that had been meant as their grave. Survey Team 7 reports successful landing on the 3rd moon, he announced to the command center below. Initial readings show the subsurface ice deposits are even larger than we expected. We can establish a permanent base there within 2 months. The exploration program had begun 6 months earlier, when the humans realized that the Kethvar system contained resources that the aliens had never bothered to extract. The outer planets were rich in rare metals and energy sources, but they were considered too dangerous for the aliens to approach. For humans who had learned to thrive on a death world, the challenges of asteroid mining and ice harvesting were almost trivial. The aliens never developed these resources because they were afraid, Minho explained to his team. They send other species to do their dangerous work for them, but we have learned that the most dangerous places often contain the greatest opportunities. Yujin Nam had spent 3 years preparing for a war that everyone knew was coming. The military strategist had studied every piece of alien technology they had captured and analyzed every detail of the monitoring system that watched them from orbit. They are not as advanced as they want us to believe, she reported to the Planetary Council. Their weapons are powerful, but they are designed to fight other technological civilizations. They have no defense against biological warfare or environmental attacks. Her defensive strategy was based on everything the humans had learned about integration and adaptation. Instead of building traditional military bases, she had created a defense network that used the entire planet as a weapon. If they attack from orbit, we will respond with coordinated atmospheric disruption that will disable their sensors and weapons, she explained, showing detailed plans to the assembled leaders. If they land ground forces, they will face an entire ecosystem that has been trained to recognize them as threats. The plant creatures could now distinguish between humans and aliens by scent and electromagnetic signature. The tunnel dwellers had been taught to identify alien technology and disable it without harming human equipment. Most importantly, the atmospheric control system could create localized conditions that would be lethal to alien biology while remaining comfortable for adapted humans. They created the perfect training ground for us, Yujin observed. Every challenge on this planet taught us something we can use against them. Dr. Haewon Choi had achieved something that no human had ever accomplished. Before successful diplomatic contact with multiple alien species, working through the communication networks that other exiled species had built on their own death worlds, she had established an alliance that spanned dozens of star systems. The Velthari Confederation has been using the same strategy for over 1,000 years, she reported from the diplomatic center deep within the planet's biological communication network. They identify species that show adaptive potential, then exile them to death worlds expecting them to die. But some species survive, and those survivors are now ready to work together. The alliance included 6 other species that had been dumped on Class 0 death worlds and had not only survived but thrived. Each species had developed unique adaptations and technologies that could be shared with the others. The Zethkari had learned to manipulate gravity fields using crystalline structures grown in extreme pressure environments. The Mordan had developed biotechnology that could repair and enhance living tissue at the cellular level. The Quental had created energy systems that could draw power from quantum fluctuations in space. Separately, each of our species would be interesting but not threatening to the Confederation, Haewon explained. But together, we represent something they have never faced before, a coordinated alliance of species that have been forced to develop beyond normal evolutionary limits. The alliance had been building in secret for over a year, using communication methods that the aliens could not detect or intercept. Messages traveled through biological networks, quantum entanglement systems, and gravitational wave manipulations that were far more sophisticated than anything in the Confederation's technology. Most importantly, the Alliance was preparing for coordinated action across multiple star systems simultaneously. Dr. Hyun-woo had made a discovery that changed everything about their understanding of the alien strategy. Deep within the biological communication network, he had found data fragments that had been transmitted by previous species exiled to Kethvar. "We are not the first intelligent species sent here," he announced to a shocked council meeting. "Over the past 500 years, 17 different species have been dropped on this planet. Most died within months, but a few survived for years." The data fragments told a story of desperate survival, gradual adaptation, and eventual extinction. Each species had developed remarkable innovations in response to Kethvar's challenges, but they had all made the same mistake. They had tried to fight the planet instead of joining it. "We succeeded where they failed because we learned to work with Kethvar instead of against it," Hyunwoo continued. "But their research and discoveries are still here, encoded in the planetary biological systems. We have access to 500 years of forced evolutionary development." The implications were staggering. The humans were not just adapted to survive. On Kethvar, they had inherited the accumulated knowledge and innovations of dozens of different species, all of whom had been forced to develop solutions to the same challenges. "The aliens think they have been eliminating potential threats," Taeho observed, "but they have actually been creating the ultimate threat. Every species they sent here contributed something to our collective knowledge." The turning point came when the alien monitoring system detected something that should have been impossible. Humans were building spaceships. The vessels were unlike anything in Confederation records. They were partially biological, grown rather than manufactured, with hulls that could adapt to different atmospheric conditions and weapon systems that drew power from the same methane storms that had once threatened human survival. "Alert status, elevated to critical," Ambassador Quintel announced to the Confederation Council. "The humans have developed spaceflight capability. Recommend immediate sterilization of the Kethvar system." But when the Confederation fleet arrived at the edge of the system, they found something that their tactical computers could not analyze or understand. The space around Kethvar was filled with organic structures that defied classification. Part space station, part living organism, part weapons platform. "What are we looking at?" demanded Fleet Commander Zeltak. "Unknown," replied the sensor operator. "The structures appear to be alive, but they are also clearly artificial. They are generating energy signatures we have never seen before." More disturbing were the communications intercepts. The humans were not just talking to each other. They were coordinating with multiple other species across different star systems. The supposedly isolated exiles had built an interstellar alliance. "Sir," the communications officer reported with growing alarm, "we are detecting similar defensive structures around 37 other systems. All of them are inhabited by species we sent to Deathworlds." The Confederation fleet found itself facing an impossible situation. They had come to sterilize a single planet inhabited by one isolated species. Instead, they were confronting a coordinated alliance of dozens of species, all of whom had been transformed by survival on the galaxy's most dangerous worlds. On Kethvar, the humans received word that the alien fleet had arrived. Instead of panic, there was calm determination. They had been preparing for this moment for 3 years. "All defensive systems are ready," Yujin reported. "The atmospheric disruption network is fully charged. Our allies in other systems are standing by for coordinated response." Kyung-min activated the planet-wide communication system. "Attention all species and settlements. The Confederation has arrived, initiating Deathworld protocol." Across the planet, every human, plant creature, and tunnel dweller responded as one. The methane storms that had once been a threat now became weapons. Directed by the atmospheric control system, to create electromagnetic interference that would blind enemy sensors. The biological networks that had learned to process information now began coordinating defensive responses at the speed of thought. Most remarkably, Kethvar itself seemed to wake up. The planet that had been designed to kill anything that landed on it, now prepared to protect the species that had learned to call it home. In orbit, the alien fleet detected massive energy buildups across the planet's surface. Their instruments showed coordinated activity on a scale they had never seen before, not just among the humans. 2 years had passed since the first humans set foot on Kethvar. The planet that the aliens had chosen as an execution ground was now unrecognizable. Where once there had been chaotic methane storms and hostile wildlife, there was now a carefully managed ecosystem that served human needs while supporting all native life forms. Kyungmin-oh stood on the observation platform of the Central Atmospheric Management Station, watching the morning weather patterns develop exactly as planned. The former atmospheric engineer had spent 18 months learning to work with Kethvar's complex climate systems. Storm Cluster 7 is forming on schedule, she reported into her communication device. Redirecting to Energy Collection Zone 12. Power grid will be at full capacity by noon. Below her, the landscape showed the remarkable transformation the humans had achieved. What had once been the twisted black mountains were now terraced with gardens where earth plants grew, alongside modified native species. The valleys that had been filled with hostile plant creatures were now organized agricultural zones where different species worked together in carefully balanced relationships. Soo-jin Kim walked through the Eastern Wildlife Preserve, checking on the various species that called this region home. As the planet's wildlife coordinator, she had one of the most complex jobs in the colony. The tunnel dwellers in Section 4 are ready for the monthly mineral harvest, she noted in her field report. The partnership is working well. They get the deep soil nutrients they need, and we get access to rare metals for our technology. The carnivorous plants that had once hunted humans now served as both protectors and partners. The larger species had been trained to guard the perimeter of human settlements, while the smaller ones helped with pest control in the agricultural zones. Most remarkably, some species had been modified to produce fruits that were safe and nutritious for human consumption. It took almost a year to understand their life cycle, Soo-jin explained to a group of newcomers, children born on Kethvar, who were learning about their world. They are not individuals like humans or animals. They are more like a single organism with many bodies. Once we learned to communicate with the central intelligence, everything became much easier. Jae-sung Lee supervised the construction of the newest manufacturing facility, built into the side of a mountain, and powered entirely by captured methane energy. As industrial coordinator, he oversaw the production of everything from basic tools to advanced spacecraft components. The hybrid manufacturing system is incredibly efficient, he reported to the monthly council meeting. We combine human engineering with alien technology and biological materials from our partner species. The result is equipment that is more advanced than anything we had on Earth, and it is perfectly adapted to local conditions. The most impressive achievement was the transformation of the atmosphere itself. Kyungmin had developed a planet-wide network of atmospheric processors that did more than just create pockets of breathable air. They were gradually changing the entire atmosphere's composition. We are not trying to make Kethvar exactly like Earth, she explained to the council. That would take hundreds of years and would destroy the native ecosystem. Instead, we are creating a hybrid atmosphere that supports both human life and native life. The process required incredible precision. Too much oxygen would poison the tunnel dwellers. Too little methane would kill certain plant species that the humans now depended on for food. But after months of careful adjustment, they had found the perfect balance. Atmospheric oxygen is now at 18% in the inhabited zones, Kyungmin reported. Still lower than Earth normal, but high enough that humans can work without breathing equipment. The native species are adapting well to the changes. Dr. Hyunwoo had become the planet's chief biologist, studying not just how the native life forms worked, but how they could work together with humans and Earth species. His latest project involved understanding how the planet's biological systems could be integrated into human technology. The communication network that Jihai developed is just the beginning, he told the research team. The plant creature networks can process information, store data, and even perform calculations. We are essentially growing organic computers that are perfectly adapted to local conditions. The breakthrough had come when they realized that the plant creature's natural communication system could be modified to carry human data. Messages that would have taken hours to transmit using traditional radio could be sent across the planet in minutes through the biological network. The plants do not just carry our messages, Hyunwoo explained. They process them, compress them, and even add useful information about local conditions along the transmission route. Captain So-young had spent 2 years transforming from a military commander into something entirely new, a planetary defense coordinator. Her job was to prepare for threats that might come from space, but her methods were unlike any military strategy ever used. Traditional military thinking is about controlling territory and destroying enemies, she explained to her staff. But, on Kethvar, our defense strategy is based on integration and adaptation. We do not want to destroy attacking forces, we want to absorb them. Her defensive preparations included training programs that taught every human on the planet how to work with the native species during emergencies. If alien ships attacked from orbit, the humans could disappear into the tunnel systems within minutes. The plant creatures could create camouflage that would hide settlements from aerial observation. The atmospheric processors could generate localized weather that would interfere with enemy sensors and weapons. The aliens are expecting to fight the same humans they dropped here 2 years ago, So-young noted. But we are not the same species anymore. The population growth had been remarkable. Not only had the death rate dropped to almost 0, but the birth rate had increased significantly. Children born on Kethvar were developing adaptations that allowed them to thrive in the hybrid environment. The second generation is amazing, reported Dr. Young Mi-han, now serving as both medical officer and genetic researcher. They can process methane compounds that would make first-generation humans sick. Their lung capacity is larger, adapted, for the lower oxygen levels. Some of them can even communicate directly with the plant creatures. The children were not just adapted to Kethvar, they were becoming part of its ecosystem. They learned to navigate the tunnel systems as easily as walking through a building. They could predict weather changes by observing the behavior of native species. They spoke a hybrid language that included human words, plant chemical signals, and tunnel dweller vibration patterns. More importantly, they thought of Kethvar as home. For them, the dangerous death world that had terrified their parents was simply the way the world was supposed to be. The most significant change was in how the humans thought about their relationship with the planet. Instead of trying to terraform Kethvar into a copy of Earth, they had created something entirely new, a world where 2 completely different evolutionary paths had learned to work together. We are not colonizing this planet, Taeho observed, during the 2nd-year anniversary celebration. We are joining it. The celebration itself demonstrated how much had changed. Humans, plant creatures, and tunnel dwellers gathered together in the central plaza, a space that had been grown rather than built, with living walls that glowed with bioluminescent patterns and a canopy of modified trees that filtered the air and provided perfect acoustics. The children performed songs that included harmonies produced by trained plant creatures. Engineers demonstrated new inventions that combined metal, crystal, and living tissue into functional art. Farmers displayed hybrid crops that would have been impossible to imagine on Earth. But the most remarkable demonstration was the planetary coordination system. With a gesture from Kyung-min, the entire planet responded. Atmospheric processors across 3 continents adjusted their output to create a light show in the sky. Plant creatures in distant forests changed their bioluminescent patterns in synchronized waves. The tunnel dwellers' synchronized movements created harmonic vibrations that could be felt through the ground on the other side of the world. For a few minutes, the entire planet pulsed with coordinated life, a single organism with billions of different parts all working together. The aliens thought they were sending us to die on a death world, So-young said as the demonstration ended. Instead, they gave us the opportunity to become something new. Standing beneath the alien stars, surrounded by friends who were no longer Entirely human and allies who had never been human at all, the survivors of Earth's first interstellar colony, looked up at the monitoring satellites and smiled. The aliens were still watching, still recording data, still trying to understand what they were seeing. But they would never understand, because they had never learned the most important lesson that humans had discovered on Kethvar. The strongest species is not the one that dominates everything else. The strongest species is the one that learns to make everything else stronger. 1 year had passed since the humans arrived on Kethvar. The aliens watching from orbit expected to find a dead world by now. Instead, their monitoring systems showed something that made no sense. The human population had grown to 8,200 people. Seung-hwan. Lim stood in what used to be called the medical center, but was now known as the adaptation laboratory. The former biochemist had discovered something that changed everything about human survival on Kethvar. The methane is not just fuel, he explained to the assembled council leaders. The human body can be modified to process it directly. Look at this. He showed them blood samples from volunteers who had been exposed to controlled amounts of methane compounds over several months. Their blood chemistry had changed. Their bodies were producing new enzymes that could break down the toxic gases and convert them into useful nutrients. You are talking about changing human biology, said Dr. Young Mihan. That is incredibly dangerous. More dangerous than letting people die? Seung-hwan replied. I have tested it on myself first. Watch. He walked to a sealed chamber filled with the yellow-green gas that had once terrified them. Without any protective equipment, he opened the chamber and breathed deeply. Instead of collapsing, he smiled. The storms are not poisonous anymore. They are dinner. Hyejin Seo had been working on an even larger project. The tactical coordinator had spent months mapping the planet's ecosystems and learning how all the different species interacted with each other. We have been thinking too small, she announced, spreading out detailed charts of the continent. We are not just trying to survive in one valley anymore. We can control this entire region. Her plan was ambitious beyond anything they had attempted before. Instead of hiding from the plant creatures, they would domesticate them. Instead of avoiding the underground hunters, they would form partnerships with them. Instead of enduring the methane storms, they would direct them. You want to reshape the planet's weather? Asked Captain So Young Park. Not reshape it, Hyejin corrected. Guide it. The storms follow predictable paths based on temperature and pressure differences. If we create the right conditions in the right places, we can make the storms go where we want them to go. Woojin Park, who had become their chief environmental engineer, had already begun the preliminary work. Using modified alien technology and techniques learned from the tunnel creatures, human teams were building massive atmospheric processors across the valley. Each processor can create a localized weather system, he explained. Chain enough of them together and we can create channels that guide the methane storms along specific routes. The storms will provide power for our settlements and fertilizer, for our crops while avoiding areas where we do not want them. The project required cooperation from every human on the planet. Engineers worked with biologists to understand how the ecosystem would respond. Doctors worked with farmers to develop new food sources. Even the children contributed, learning to communicate with the young plant creatures and tunnel dwellers. Dr. Hyun-woo had made his own disturbing discovery. While studying the alien monitoring equipment, he found data logs that revealed the true purpose of their mission to Kethvar. We were never meant to colonize this world, he told the council in a private meeting. Look at these files. The documents he had decoded were written in the alien language, but the meaning was clear. Kethvar was designated as a biological weapon testing facility. The aliens had been sending different species here for generations, studying how quickly the planet could eliminate them. They call it adaptive lethality assessment. Hyunwoo continued. They want to know if humans are dangerous enough to be worth eliminating as a species. If we die quickly, we are harmless. If we survive too long, we become a threat to be destroyed. How long is too long? Asked Taeho Shin. Hyunwoo checked his translation. According to their projections, no species should survive on Kethvar for more than 18 months. We have already exceeded their expectations. Captain So Young felt a chill that had nothing to do with the planet's temperature swings. So, what happens when we reach 18 months? They send a sterilization fleet to make sure nothing is left alive. This revelation changed everything about their priorities. They were not just building a colony anymore. They were preparing for war, but it would be unlike any war humans had ever fought. HFY had been developing hybrid plants that could serve multiple purposes. Her latest creations were vine networks that could communicate across vast distances, allowing instant communication between human settlements. But she realized these same plants could serve as an early warning system for approaching alien ships. Dongmin Li had been reverse engineering alien technology for months. Now he focused on understanding their weapons and defensive systems. What he discovered was both encouraging and terrifying. Their technology is more advanced than ours, but not by as much as we thought, he reported. The main advantage they have is energy generation, but we have something they do not have anymore. What is that? Asked Chung Huan. Desperation. And the ability to adapt faster than they can plan for us. The humans began preparing for the alien return in ways that the Watchers in orbit could not have anticipated. Instead of building traditional military defenses, they were turning the entire planet into a weapon. Wu Jin's atmospheric processors were modified to create not just weather patterns, but localized atmospheric conditions that could disable alien equipment. He Jin organized the plant creatures into coordinated defensive networks that could respond to threats across the continent. Xiong Huan developed biological modifications that would allow humans to survive in conditions that would kill most other species. Most importantly, they had learned to work with Kethvar's natural defenses. The planet that was supposed to kill them had become their greatest ally. The breakthrough moment came during their 15th month on the planet. A small alien probe ship entered the atmosphere, probably sent to verify that the humans were dead. It never made it back to orbit. The plant creatures detected its approach first, sending chemical signals through Jihai's communication network. The tunnel dwellers felt the vibrations of its engines and emerged to investigate. The methane storms, guided by Wu Jin's processors, created electromagnetic interference that disabled its navigation systems. When the probe crashed in the eastern mountains, human teams were there within hours to salvage its technology and study its design. They are not invincible, Dongmin announced after examining the wreckage. Their ships are built for fighting other technological species. They are not designed to handle biological warfare or environmental attacks. Hyunji Yang had finally managed to establish communication with other alien colonies. The news she discovered was both hopeful and horrifying. There are 6 other species that have been sent to deathworlds like this one, she reported. 3 of them survived long enough to make contact. They have been waiting for someone to coordinate a resistance. The aliens had created their own worst nightmare. By sending their enemies to the most dangerous worlds in the galaxy, they had created a network of highly adapted, incredibly resourceful species who all had the same enemy. As their 18th month on Kethvar approached, the humans were not the same species that had landed in the valley. They had changed physically, developing better tolerance for the planet's atmospheric conditions. They had changed technologically, creating hybrid systems that combined Earth science with alien engineering and biological adaptation. Most importantly, they had changed psychologically. They were no longer refugees trying to survive on a hostile world. They were the dominant species on a planet they had made their own. Standing in the central command center, built into a living tree that served as both shelter and communication hub, Tae-ho looked at the latest reports from across their territory. The human population was now 8,200 and growing. They had settlements on 3 continents. They had alliances with dozens of native species. They controlled the weather patterns across half the planet. The aliens made a mistake when they brought us here, he said to the assembled leaders. They thought Kethvar would change us into something weaker. Instead, it changed us into something they cannot control. In orbit, the alien monitoring stations recorded data that their programmers had never expected to see. The planet designated as maximum biological hazard was showing signs of atmospheric improvement, ecosystem stabilization, and coordinated biological activity on a scale that should have been impossible. The time for sterilization had come, but when the alien fleet arrived, they would not find the dying human colony they expected. They would find something that had never existed before in the galaxy, a death world that fought back. 3 months had passed since the humans landed on Kethvar. The population count now stood at 7,400. The morning briefing in the main shelter was becoming a daily ritual of bad news and desperate solutions. "We lost 12 more people last night," reported Dr. Youngmi Han, her face showing the exhaustion they all felt. "The underground creatures got to Shelter 7 before we could seal the breach." Taeho Shin, who had become their unofficial leader through sheer necessity, marked the loss on his chart. The mining engineer had never wanted to lead anyone, but his experience with dangerous underground work made him the best choice for keeping people alive. "What about the tunnel detection system?" he asked Dongmin Lee. The engineer looked up from a pile of alien components he was trying to understand. "Getting better. I think I figured out how their proximity sensors work. The creatures hunt by feeling vibrations through the ground. If we can make enough noise in the right pattern, we might be able to confuse them." Dr. Hyun-Woo Kim entered, the shelter carrying a sample container filled with what looked like purple mud. "I have good news and bad news about the local biology," he announced. "Give us the good news first," said Captain So-Young Park. The military commander had organized their defenses, but even her experience could not prepare her for fighting plants that coordinated attacks. "The good news is that the carnivorous plants are not actually plants," Hyun-Woo said. "They are some kind of colonial organism like coral. That means they have predictable behavior patterns. We can learn to avoid them or even control them. And the bad news? They are much smarter than we thought. They have been studying us just as much as we have been studying them. They know our routines. They know which shelters have the most people. They are planning something big." Yoonji Yang looked up from her communication equipment. She had been trying to contact Earth for weeks without success. "I found something interesting in the alien data files they left behind. There are references to something called biological hazard protocols. I think we were not sent here to colonize this planet." "What do you mean?" asked Ji-Hai Choi. The botanist had been working with Hyun-Woo to understand the local ecosystem, but her real focus was on creating food sources they could actually use. "I think we were sent here as a test, or maybe as a weapon. The files mention adaptive contamination studies and planetary sterilization assessments. I think the aliens want to see if we will destroy this world, or if it will destroy us." The shelter fell silent. Outside they could hear the clicking and scratching sounds that meant the plant creatures were moving around their perimeter again. Taeho stood up and walked to the small window. "Then let's make sure we give them a surprise." Over the following weeks, the humans began to change their approach. Instead of just trying to survive, they started to study everything about Kethvar, with the intensity of people who knew their lives depended on understanding their enemy. Hyun-Woo discovered that the methane storms were not random weather events. They followed predictable patterns based on the planet's 2 moons and its elliptical orbit around the sun. More importantly, he found that many of the poisonous gases could be processed by modified Earth bacteria. "Look at this," he showed the group one morning, holding up a jar of clear liquid. "I took some of our waste processing bacteria and exposed them to small amounts of the methane compounds. After a few generations, they adapted. Now they can break down the toxic elements and produce clean water." Ji-Hai had made an even more remarkable discovery. "The plant creatures are not as unified as we thought," she explained, showing them sketches of different types. "There are at least 12 distinct species and they compete with each other. If we can figure out their relationships, we might be able to play them against each other." Dongmin had been busy with his own projects. The alien supply pods that had been dropped with them contained technology far more advanced than anything on Earth. By taking them apart and studying how they worked, he was learning to build new devices. "I think I can modify the atmospheric processors to work in reverse," he told the group. "Instead of cleaning the air, we can use them to create controlled environments. Basically, we can make pockets of Earth normal air pressure and temperature anywhere we want." Captain So Young had been thinking about their situation from a military perspective. "We have been thinking about this all wrong," she announced during one evening meeting. "We have been trying to fight this world. But what if we used it instead?" "What do you mean?" asked Teho. "The plant creatures, the underground hunters, the methane storms, they are all weapons that are already here. We just need to learn how to aim them." The breakthrough came during their 4th month on Kethavar. A massive methane storm had been building for days, larger than any they had seen before. The humans sealed their shelters and prepared for the worst. But Dong Min had an idea. Working with modified alien technology, he created a series of collection devices that could capture the methane and process it into usable energy. When the storm hit, instead of hiding from it, the humans harvested it. "We just collected enough energy to power our settlement for 2 months, Dongmin announced when the storm passed. Even better, Hyunwoo had discovered something incredible about the storm's effects on the local biology. The methane acts like a fertilizer for some of the plant creatures, but it kills others. If we can control when and where the methane concentrates, we can basically choose which species survive in different areas. Jihai had been experimenting with crossbreeding earth plants with local organisms. Her first success was a hybrid crop that could grow in Kethvar's soil while producing food safe for humans to eat. "It tastes terrible," she admitted, offering samples to the group. "But it has all the nutrients we need, and it grows 3 times faster than anything we brought from Earth." The real change in their situation came when they made contact with the underground creatures. Teho had been studying the tunnel systems and realized that the creatures were not randomly aggressive. They were territorial, but they followed rules. "They only attack when we vibrate the ground in certain patterns," he explained. "It's like accidentally saying threatening words in their language. If we can learn to move without triggering their defense responses, they might ignore us completely." Working together, the group developed what they called the Kethvar Protocol, a systematic approach to living with the planet instead of fighting it. They learned to time their activities around the methane storms, using the energy for their technology and the biological effects to manage the plant creature populations. They discovered that the underground creatures could be avoided by following specific movement patterns. Even better, the creatures were incredibly efficient at digging tunnels and processing mineral deposits. If the humans could learn to communicate with them, they might be able to trade. Most importantly, they realized that Kethvar was not trying to kill them specifically. It was simply a world with its own rules, and everything that lived here had learned to follow those rules. The humans just needed to become part of the ecosystem instead of fighting against it. By the end of their 4th month, something remarkable had happened. For the first time since landing, the human population had stopped declining. They had not just learned to survive on Kethvar, they were beginning to thrive. Standing in their expanded command center, now built partially underground using techniques learned from the tunnel creatures, Taiho looked at the latest population count: 7,400 humans with 3 babies born in the past month. "The aliens are still monitoring us," Yunji reported, having finally detected the surveillance satellites in orbit. "They are probably expecting us to be dead by now." Yenwu smiled as he looked out at their settlement, where humans worked alongside domesticated plant creatures to harvest methane energy and process local materials. "I think we are going to disappoint them." The massive alien ship hung in Earth's sky like a silver moon. People around the world stopped what they were doing and stared up at the impossible sight. After 3 days of silence, the ship finally sent a message that appeared on every screen, in every language at the same time. "Greetings, people of Earth. We are the Velthari Confederation. We come in peace." Dr. Hyunwoo Kim stood in the emergency meeting room at the United Nations building in New York. Around him, world leaders argued in dozens of languages, while translators worked frantically. Hyunwoo was there because he was Earth's best xenobiologist, even though he had never studied actual aliens before today. "They want to meet with us," said the Secretary General. "They say they have an offer." The aliens looked almost human, but not quite right. They were tall and thin, with pale gray skin and large black eyes. Their leader introduced himself as Ambassador Quintel. He spoke perfect English, though his voice sounded like wind through metal pipes. Your species shows great promise, Quintel said to the gathered Earth representatives. We have been watching you for some time. You are adaptable, you are resourceful. These are valuable traits in our galaxy. Captain So-Young Park, who commanded Earth's newest space vessel, leaned forward in her chair. What exactly are you offering? Us? A chance to join the galactic community, the ambassador replied. We have found a world perfect for human settlement. It is challenging, yes, but your species seems to enjoy challenges. We will provide transport and basic supplies. In return, you will help us understand how different species adapt to difficult environments. Dr. Hyun-woo felt something cold in his stomach. How difficult are we talking about? The ambassador's large eyes seemed to shimmer. Nothing your species cannot handle, we believe. The world has a rich atmosphere and abundant resources. The weather can be harsh at times, but you have survived ice ages and volcanic winters. This should be simple for humans. Engineer Dongmin Lee, who designed life support systems for space stations, raised his hand. How many of us would go? 10,000 volunteers, Quintel said. Enough to start a thriving colony. You will have regular supply drops and communication with Earth. Dr. Ji-hee Choi, who specialized in plant genetics, had been quiet until now. Why us? Why not colonize this world yourselves? For the first time, the ambassador paused. Our species is not well suited to that particular environment. You humans seem much more capable of handling difficult conditions. The meeting lasted for hours. The aliens showed pictures of the world they were offering. It looked beautiful from space, green and blue like Earth, with white clouds swirling over vast continents. They called it Kethvar. The decision is yours, Quintel said as the meeting ended. But please decide quickly. The window for transport closes in 30 days. The debate that followed was intense. Some countries wanted to send volunteers immediately. Others were suspicious. Hyun-woo spent sleepless nights reviewing the data the aliens had provided. Something felt wrong, but he could not put his finger on what. In the end, volunteers came forward from every nation. Scientists, engineers, doctors, farmers, soldiers, 10,000 people ready to take humanity to the stars. Hyun-woo signed up because he wanted to study alien life. So-Young joined because she dreamed of commanding humanity's first interstellar colony. Dongmin came because he loved solving impossible engineering problems. Ji-hee volunteered because she wanted to create new forms of life. The alien transport ship was enormous inside, with sleeping pods arranged in long rows. The humans brought seeds, tools, medicines, and weapons. The aliens seemed particularly interested in the weapons. For protection, So-Young explained when Quintel asked about the military equipment. Of course, the ambassador replied. Protection will be very important on Kethvar. The journey took 6 months. During that time, the humans learned more about their destination. The aliens shared technical data that made Dongmin frown, and Ji-hee look worried. The atmospheric pressure was 3 times Earth normal. Gravity was nearly twice as strong. The weather included something called methane storms that happened every few days. They could have mentioned this earlier, muttered Tae-ho Shin, a mining engineer who was starting to have doubts. When they finally arrived at Kethvar, the view from the ship's windows was shocking. The planet was not the green and blue world from the pictures. It was brown and yellow, with angry red storms swirling across its surface. The air was thick with poisonous clouds. The seasons have changed since our last survey, Quintel explained, calmly. But this is temporary. The weather will improve. The landing was rough. The transport ship shook violently as it entered the atmosphere. Through the windows they could see lightning that was not quite the right color, and clouds that moved in unnatural patterns. They landed in a valley surrounded by twisted black mountains. The air outside was breathable, barely, but it burned their throats and made their eyes water. The gravity made every step feel like they were carrying heavy backpacks. Welcome to your new home, Quintel announced. The aliens unloaded the human supplies quickly. Basic shelters, food for 3 months, water purification systems, and communication equipment. Then they prepared to leave. Wait, So-Young called. Out. What about the regular supply drops you promised? They will come when the orbital conditions are favorable, the ambassador replied. Perhaps in 6 months, perhaps longer. You humans are resourceful. You will manage. Dr. Young-Mi Han, the expedition's chief medical officer, stepped forward. What about medical support? What if someone gets seriously hurt? Quintel's expression did not change. You brought medical supplies, you have doctors, you will adapt. The alien ship lifted off, leaving the 10,000 humans standing in the alien valley as the sun set. That was when they discovered their first unpleasant surprise about Kethvar. Sunset was not gradual like on Earth. Instead, the temperature dropped from 40 degrees Celsius to -20 degrees in less than an hour. The humans rushed to set up their shelters as frost began forming on their equipment. That night, they lost their first people to the cold. 57 humans who could not get their heaters working in time. They died quietly in their sleep as the temperature continued to drop, but the cold was not the worst discovery. As dawn broke, bringing temperatures back up to scorching levels, they heard sounds from outside their shelters. Scratching sounds, clicking sounds, and something that sounded almost like laughter. Young Mai looked out through a shelter window and screamed. The plants were moving, not swaying in the wind, actually moving. Thick vines with thorn-covered surfaces were creeping toward their camp. Flowers with rows of needle-sharp teeth opened and closed like hungry mouths. Trees bent down to examine the human shelters with what looked like clusters of yellow eyes. Those are not plants, whispered Junseo Kang, the agricultural specialist. Those are predators. The first methane storm hit on their 3rd day. The sky turned green, and poisonous gas rolled across the landscape like fog. The humans sealed themselves in their shelters and waited. The storm lasted for 18 hours. When it passed, they found that the strange plants had used the cover of the storm to surround their camp completely. Worse, something had been digging tunnels underneath them. Large tunnels. We need to contact Earth, Yunji Yang said, working frantically on the communication equipment. We need to tell them what this place really is. But the communication system was not working. The methane storms created interference that blocked all signals. They were alone. By the end of their first week on Kethvar, the human population had dropped to 9,800. They were learning, through painful experience, that they had not been sent to colonize a challenging world. They had been sent to die on the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. Standing in the command shelter, looking out at the hostile alien landscape, Hyunwoo finally understood what had bothered him about Ambassador Quintel's offer. The aliens had not chosen humans because they were capable of surviving on Kethvar. They had chosen humans because they wanted to see how long it would take for Kethvar to kill them.